I think someone's sound needs to be adjusted. Okay, it stopped just now. Okay. Back.
Okay. So I'm going to start the webinar now. So hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar today. Let's just give a few minutes for the attendees to join in, and then we'll start the webinar. So hello, everyone. Once again, welcome to the webinar today. It's quite exciting for all of us because, as you know, one of SERB's key strategic goals is ESG and sustainability. And we're very lucky to have 3 CEOs with us today to talk about how they view sustainability and how it's becoming important to companies in Pakistan. So I'm not going to waste a lot of time because there's a lot of discussions to take forward. Just going to give you a short introduction about who we are and hand over on this project and hand over to the participants. So I'm Nazir Sheikha. I work at the Pakistan Business Council. I head the Center of Excellence in Responsible Business. And a little background about the Pakistan Business Council. The Pakistan Business Council is the country's premier research-based business advocacy body that promotes policies to sustainably foster the growth of jobs and which leads to sustainable value creation. And amongst the things that we do, one of the areas that we look at is gender, and we're very happy to be collaborating with IFCs on a number of gender-related projects. And this project is looks at the business responsibility. So gender is one part of it, and the other part is this is business responsibility. And This is basically, this comes under the Park Investment Competitiveness Project. I'm going to hand over to Charles Snyder, Senior Private Sector Specialist at the IFC, to talk a little bit more about it.
Thanks very much, Nazish. Hello, yes, my name's Charles Schneider from the International Finance Corporation. I'm a senior private sector specialist based in Dubai now, but working primarily on Pakistan program. Spent many weeks and months in Pakistan, especially prior to COVID. This activity today, and it spins off of a program we have, which is funded by the United Kingdom, by DFID and Foreign Commonwealth Office, around building competitiveness of Pakistan, and it's called the Investment Competitiveness Project. There's several areas involved. One is on the investment policy and promotion focus. This is largely with the Board of Investment of Pakistan, also with some of the provincial boards of investment to support investment policy, investment promotion, and generally to try to attract more investment into Pakistan. For example, we've been supporting some of the organizations, some of the provinces now at the Dubai Expo, where they've had investment promotion activities. We've helped with strategy. We've helped with drafting of foreign investment law, and some of the other areas of policy improvements. Now, one of the key objectives of this program is as I mentioned, was to build the overall competitiveness and I guess, if you will, image of Pakistan to make it a more attractive investment location. So in addition to working with the public sector on that area, we've been really pleased to work with Pakistan Business Council to advance some of the key, I guess, objectives and goals of building a better place to do business in the country. Two of those areas that we've been really working closely on are, as Nazish mentioned, sustainability, and IFC works very much in this area globally, and we're really pleased to have Relitsa Germanova with us to discuss some of the key and latest issues around sustainability and environment, social, and governance areas. Back in 2020, with the PBC, we were able to launch IFC's toolkit on disclosure and transparency, and Relitsa is a key author of that and key person involved in that webinar. And today's event is really the next step in that, to put more detail around what is the latest trends in sustainability, and having such a distinguished panel to talk about the latest activities here in Pakistan and what's developing there. So I think today's session, I see we have over 60 participants now. I hope will inform the wider business community on really the importance of sustainability, how it impacts not only long-term profitability, but how investors are attracted to more sustainable firms that really address these three key issues that we'll be discussing today: environment, social, and governance. Just as a reminder and a plug for those of you, and to follow on Nazish's point, that we are having a competition, business competition. It's called the Employer of Choice Award for Gender Diversity. And I think many firms in attendance today are already aware of it and have started their application process. But there is on the PBC website, there's a link to the scorecard and to the application process to be part of this exciting initiative. We're real excited to issue the Employer of Choice Award for Gender Diversity in March. And if anyone has any questions, ask Nazish, and we have Raja on the line as well, who is really managing all the application process. So between sustainability, promoting gender diversity, we think these are two key areas that really build an image, not just for companies, but for a market as a whole and for economy as a whole. And so hopefully, by having these two activities, we can move that agenda forward. So thank you very much for your attendance today, and we look forward to a very good conversation and learning around these sustainability issues. Give it back to Nazish. Thank you.
Thank you, Charles. I'd now like to invite Shabana Khawar, Regional Head of Advisory, Middle East, Central Asia, Turkey, Pakistan, and Afghanistan at the IFC, to give the opening remarks.
Thank you, Nazish, and can you hear me? Good afternoon, good evening, everybody. I would like to thank the Pakistan Business Council for organizing today's event and in partnership with the IFC, and special thanks to Assam Malik Saab for our excellent collaboration. As Nazish, you were mentioning, we're doing a lot of things together. And I would also like to thank Mr. Riaz Khan, CEO, Anglo Corporation, Mr. Farooq Khan, CEO, Pakistan Stock Exchange, and Mr. Umar Ehsan Khan, CEO, Donald's Group of Industries, for their participation in the panel discussion, which we're really looking forward to. The IFC, as you all know, is focused primarily on the private sector side of business, and we basically support sustainability through and through in our investment program, as well as our advisory program globally. Last year, just to give you some number, IFC invested about 31.5 billion globally through its loan, equity, debt securities, and guarantees program. And this includes about 7.5 billion in climate-related investments, such as in clean energy, sustainable cities, climate-smart agriculture, energy efficiency, green buildings, and so on and so forth. And we've seen an uptake despite the pandemic in our climate commitments on a year-on-year basis. So IFC also works with companies, as you know, on advisory services to improve the environment, social and governance standards, and offers a number of tools to support the companies to enhance comprehensive reporting around these issues. Some of you may remember that we launched, along with the PBC, the toolkit for disclosure and transparency in Pakistan in June 2020, that offers resources and reporting tools to help companies on their journey toward more open and transparent communication of material, environmental, social, and governance factors. We also provide support on sustainability to governments, where we have assisted with the preparation of some 145 plus codes, laws, and regulations in over 50 countries across the globe on corporate governance, sustainability, disclosure, and so on and so forth. And today's topic, which is managing for sustainability, is very timely as we all look to rebuild more sustainable, more sustainably from the impacts of the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. Sustainability issues such as income equality, good governance, poverty reduction, green growth, and climate change adaptation and mitigation are at the center of global and local agenda, and is a core sort of pillar of IFC's strategy going forward. More companies around the world are beginning to report publicly on these issues through integrated reporting mechanisms, and of course, as part of listing requirements on stock exchanges. And sustainability is now becoming a more important factor for investors, who increasingly realize that in the long term, firms who act responsibly will be more successful. So we all know that sustainability makes business sense. IFC recently looked at the performance of over 650, I think, companies in our portfolio, and found that companies with good sustainability practices, especially in environment and social governance, outperform clients with worse environment and social performance standards by 200 basis points on return on equity and about 110 basis points on return on assets. And clients with high ESG scores outperform by 120 basis points on the MSCI Emerging Markets Index compared to those with weaker ESG performance. So clearly it shows the value of having E&S at the center and sustainability at the core of business. And we know that a growing body of economic research highlights the benefits of disclosure and transparency in terms of lowering the cost of capital, improving access to finance, and increase in company valuation, as is being reflected in these indicators. And there are many additional benefits we can talk about through assistance to implement IFC performance standards. We are very keen to support companies to be more sustainable. In service of IFC funds that we have invested in, nearly 90% of our clients believe that our environment, social, and governance support is a key in helping them reach their long-term business goals, improve their relations with stakeholders and communities, and overall boost their brand value and recognition. So this is a great topic of discussion, and we can go on and on about it, but I really look forward to today's presentation on the latest developments related to sustainability, disclosure, and transparency from our IFC ESG colleagues, and to the panel discussion of Pakistan business leaders to learn more about the latest initiatives and trends related to advancing this agenda in your own businesses. And with this, I would like to thank again all of you for today's participation and for joining this webinar, and look forward to a useful discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Shabana. I'd now like to call Relitsa Germanova, Corporate Governance Officer at the IFC, to tell us about the new developments on sustainability, disclosure, and transparency. So Relitsa, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nazish. Let me share my screen. Perfect. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Nice to meet you all virtually. And I hope you're staying healthy and safe. My name is Relitsa Germanova, and I'm the global lead of the IFC's disclosure and transparency program, and a corporate governance officer at the IFC based in Washington, DC. In the last 12 years, I had the privilege to develop global methodologies and help companies, stock exchanges, director training organizations, and regulators progress on their corporate governance and ESG disclosure and transparency journeys in Europe and Central Asia, Africa, East and South Asia, and the Middle East. In the next 15 minutes, I will go over what drives good sustainability and ESG disclosure. I always like to start of what we are talking about, and more importantly, why are we talking about? So the first thing to understand, and you are seeing it firsthand in your company's operations, is the growing awareness of system change. There is an understanding that the economic, environmental, and social well-being are not only interconnected, but they are concurrent. And the pandemic is a good example of that. We cannot expect to manage the effects of the pandemic without the environmental and social impacts of those dimensions. Climate change is another one, which is affecting both the governance, but the strategy and performance of the companies. This is leading to a more holistic approach that includes not only managing risks and opportunities that affect the company, but those which companies can affect as well. That's the concept of double materiality that I touched on a little bit later. There is also this global realization that topics and systemic topics require global solutions, which all constituent participants, and this includes companies, but it is not just companies, it is governments, regulators, NGOs, communities, and investors. For the fifth year in a row, the World Economic Forum has said that the environmental risks, including climate action failure and extreme weather, are at the top global risks. And in 2022, this includes also biodiversity loss. As you know, the physical and transitional risks of climate change are manifold, including increasing severity and frequency of extreme weather events, resulting in economic and financial disruption and business losses in order to adjust to lower carbon or net zero status. At COP26, banks, insurers, and investors with over 130 trillion of dollars at their disposal pledged to put climate change at the center of their work and gain support in the form of efforts to put green investing into more firmer footing. There is a need for material, decision useful, climate-related information in annual reports and financial filings to access this information. Environmental, social, and governance, or ESG issues or considerations are issues of environmental, social, and governance nature. These issues not only complement, but they underpin the economic issues. One thing to keep in mind defining ESG issues at company level is that ESG issues are business issues, and these are issues that are not new to the companies. Very often ESG and sustainability are used interchangeably, but ESG issues are not CSR or corporate social responsibility issues. These are issues that influence the operating and financial performance, the risk profile, and long-term prospects of the companies. Here are some examples of the environmental issues, including energy efficiency, carbon footprint, water consumption, packaging, plastic, waste management. On the social side, there are two distinct aspects. One on the human capital, with everything related to employees' attraction and retention, health and safety, diversity and inclusion. And the other one more social and societal, including the privacy, data privacy, human rights, wealth gap, forced labors. Governance can mean a very different thing. It is more about the issues that are in purview of governing the company. And here we talk about climate change as it is a risk and opportunity that the company must address, but also cybersecurity, corruption, culture, risk, governance, ethics as well. Another thing to remember is that the ESG issues are not new. What is new is the explicit consideration in capital allocation decisions and the disclosure obligation that comes with it. This ecosystem represents how ESG lives within a company. On the left, you see more the financial considerations that we got really good in measuring and managing and tracking and disclosing. And then you have the ESG or sustainability consideration. And here you have the environmental issues, the social issues, but also the business model and strategy where you start to integrate sustainability issues into the products and services and leadership and governance issues that are under the purview of the governing board and metrics and targets. This is underpinned by the classic corporate governance in the company, the systems and policies, managing board skills, independence, diversity, that are the umbrella of everything else. Corporate sustainability can be understood in the ecosystem that the company operates, and these issues are context dependent and industry dependent. Now, they have different levels of relevance to the company that we refer to as materiality. And when we start to talking about impacts of and then impacts on, we talk not just about issues that company identifies, assess, manages while conducting its business, but the issues that the company can impact while conducting its business. And this is when we identify environmental and social impact. Here is the IFC approach that we prepared and we have been tested for the last 5 years, showing the interconnection between the strategy, governance, and performance in the company, and looking on how these issues and models can be integrated using both our methodologies, but benchmarking all the relevant methodologies on the market, and giving you a way how to manage and put all the pieces of the puzzle together. So investors, now let's look at the drivers of good ESG disclosure. So to understand why is it important to provide disclosure of the company's ESG and sustainability, let's consider what information investors value. How important do you believe each of these time horizons are to the investors? And you can put in the chat the number that you correspond and you think applies to this question. So it is not surprisingly that investors see future performance, as you noted, as the most critical information about companies. And this creates gaps because most reported information is about past or current performance. But investors, and IFC included, we are looking we need forward-looking information and a good disclosure of company strategy, purpose, business model, governance policies and practices, risk management, and performance can fill that gap. We already mentioned that there is a growing demand of and growing availability of sustainable finance. In 2022, the green, social, sustainable market and SDG bonds are set to surpass the 1 trillion euro mark. In Pakistan, under the commitment of the Agenda 2030, we leave no one behind. The government had recently floated 500 million green bond as well. And IFC's analysis shows that in 21 emerging market shows that they hold the potential of 23 trillion in climate smart investment opportunities by 2030. At the TCFD training that we did, the climate disclosure training that we did yesterday with the London Stock Exchange, they said that 4 out of the 6 asset owners and managers in UK look at carbon and environmental considerations in their capital allocation. And with the European Union Sustainable Finance Reporting Directive, this will become more pronounced and mainstream. Integration of ESG issues into capital allocation is going mainstream, but you can see from this recent PwC survey that only 1/3 of investors think the quality of the reporting they think is good enough, meaning relevant, reliable, timely, complete, and comparable. From another survey from EY from last year, what's interesting is that this information disconnect is actually getting worse. the needs are rising for more and better information because investors are adopting the practices of responsible investing, and they're also getting better at it, using technologies, artificial intelligence for analyzing and asking for more granular information. This is the Edelman Trust Barometer, and this year they did specifically survey within institutional investors, and the information disconnect is blatant. 81% of the companies are not disclosing enough information, and 82 are frequently overstating or exaggerating their ESG progress. Benefits for the companies and benefits of the ESG disclosure and transparency. Reporting upon sustainability risks and opportunities not only provides investors with the data they require, but they can also offer both listed and non-listed companies external and internal benefits. And this is very often a good conversation to start with the board and senior management, focusing on the cost savings to identifying opportunities for resources and energy efficiency, improving strategic resilience, identifying potential climate and sustainability opportunities, improving the risk management system processes, and not last or least is the improved communication between the board and management on sustainability issues, which we often find in the companies that a lot of times the sustainability or ESG information does not reach the board or the board committees, but stays within the management, often labeled as too technical on that issues. And we talked about the external benefits as well. And there is more evidence that the sustainable business is a successful business. It's just one of the research, one of the indices that we found, the MSCI, showing that the companies rated highly on their sustainability efforts have registered record gains last year. Regulatory demand and regulatory trends. In the last decade, we have witnessed a sharp increase across a range of sustainability mechanisms by the exchanges. More than half of the stock exchanges worldwide now have guidance on ESG disclosure. A quarter of them are making this mandatory. And this trend is actually going to grow, particularly mandating the climate-related disclosure. IFC, here is an example of IFC collaborating with the UN Sustainable Stock Exchanges Initiative and using our disclosure and transparency toolkit and their model guidance, supporting the development of 12 ESG disclosure guidelines worldwide. We worked, including in Pakistan, on the development and implementation of 145 codes, scorecards, and sustainable finance roadmaps. And we started last September a new training program on climate disclosure with UNSSC and CDP that we delivered now into 5 markets jointly with the stock exchanges to over 3,500 companies. And the demand is growing not just from emerging, but we also delivered it to markets like Luxembourg, London, Singapore, Australia. This is one of the recent examples from the Johannesburg Stock Exchange that we example of their guidelines on sustainability and climate change. What is that we worked with them on developing. What is interesting here is the approach of double materiality and a specific climate disclosure guidance, which is publicly available, and I provided the link. What is happening in the world of the standards? this is the ESG disclosure space is evolving very fast and extremely fast over the next the last couple of years. You will see the recent development. What is the trend that is happening now is actually the global collaboration and convergence among the sustainability organizations. This is where you see this concept of dynamic materiality. At the center is the financial reporting, which is governed by IFRS standards that each of the companies are doing. Then moving into the enterprise value, or this is what investors, lenders, creditors are looking for, how the environment impacts the company in doing its business. And this is the space where the new IFRS Foundation, which hosts now 5 of these standards under this, is looking for. And then the broader concept on sustainability reporting, or what we call the double materiality, looking as well of how the company impacts the environment as well, that the European Union, the UN Global, the UN Sustainable Development Goals and the Global Reporting Initiative is looking into. And it is dynamic because it is evolving, and some of the issues that now are either not material or not relevant actually in the future will become so. At the COP26, the establishment of the International Sustainability Standards Board was announced. What is important to know here, there is the 4 strategic focused areas. It is starting with a clear investor focus that will evolve in the future to integrate the other aspect. It is starting specifically with focusing on climate, and the other sustainability issues will be integrated later. It's a global baseline for the world and builds on the existing frameworks that are currently happening. The pillars of the standards include the governance, strategy, risk management, metrics, and targets. And these are focused on the matters critical to the way the company operates, and are also very much linked to the framework of the Task Force for Climate Finance disclosure as well. It's receiving a lot of support. The second big standard or group that is forming is the EU Sustainability Reporting Standards. Here, the focus is on all the environmental social governance issues, clear focus on the double materiality, both the impacts on and off the company as well, clear focus on the information to be audited and in electronic format. But the positive news is that, again, it focuses on the same pillars that the company operates: strategy, implementation, governance, and performance as well. The FSB set up the Task Force for Climate Financial Disclosure in 2015 with a mission to help identify the information needed by investors, lenders, and insurance underwriters to appropriately assess and price climate-related disclosure. And it was the final recommendations were released in 2017, and now being updated. It's voluntary, but in a lot of markets, it's actually starting to be this disclosure of this information to be mandated. That's the recent trend. And the key here is that the climate-related financial disclosures are reported into the annual financial findings, into the mainstream report, not into a separate sustainability report. And it looks into short, medium, and long-term, if it's up to 2050, and includes scenario analysis and forward-looking information as well. That's the table with the global encouragement. And it is fastly becoming mandatory in a lot of markets. The two approaches that you need to look for in the next years: IFRS will launch the climate disclosure standard by the end of this year, and the EFRAG, or the European Union, is having the same timeline for the revised corporate sustainability reporting directive. In IFC as well, we have a holistic approach based on our own methodologies and the demand from the market. We developed about 5 years ago the toolkit, which gives a model for integration of such information that we are now transferring into an online platform with a gap analysis. We have the approach goes into details of each of the areas with recommendations, examples as well, and will provide an opportunity for gap analysis. And we have already provided a lot of training events, companies trained, and development of ESG guidelines and impact on the market. So thank you very much, and looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Relitza. I'm now going to hand over to Mr. Ehsan Malik, CEO PBC, for the panel discussion, and we're happy to have Mr. Ghias Khan, CEO Anglo Corporation, Mr. Farooq Khan, CEO Pakistan Stock Exchange, and Mr. Umar Ahsan Khan, CEO the Dollins Group of Industries. 3 PBC members join us for this discussion. Over to you, Mr. Ehsan Malik.
Okay, so thank you very much, and assalamu alaikum everybody, and a very warm welcome to the webinar. I want to first start by thanking Charles and Shabana for setting out the context of our continuing relationship. PBC and SERB has really been a great beneficiary for the long-term relationship that we now have with IFC on gender and in the broader realm of sustainable, growth. That said, I also want to thank Relitza for setting out the very broad canvas that currently exists and the growing need and recognition for disclosure and adopting responsible practices. We are very fortunate in PBC that most of our members, in fact, all our members are already sold on the idea of responsible and sustainable practices. And the 3 gentlemen who are joining us today also lead organizations that are clearly very, very committed to responsible behavior, actions, strategies, and so on. I want to, I know that we're running a bit late in our schedule, so I would request the panelists to keep their answers as short as possible. I'm going to start with Farooq, you as the MD of PSX. We know for sure, and Relitza, I think, mentioned that on a number of occasions, that there is a clear linkage between companies that are successful and the companies that adopt responsible business practices. You could say it the other way around also. Companies that adopt responsible practices also by and large end up being successful. And of course, in Pakistan, we have the top 25 companies award. But we also realize that there is a time lag between adopting responsible business practices and resulting in what the shareholders in particular regard as success, which is profitability, return on investment, and so on. And given that time lag, my question to you really is, do you feel that these stakeholders have the patience and the senior management have the stamina, and are their tenures long enough to see those results coming through? So over to you, Farooq.
Thank you, Ehsan, and thank you for inviting me to this very important discussion, and thank you to the IFC and Relitza for the interesting presentation. You've asked a number of questions that you've said I have to answer in a very short space of time, but let me maybe perhaps just address the top 25 companies award that you mentioned. the top 25 companies award, as many listeners may be aware, it's to recognize it's the premier award in the corporate sector, recognizing the top 25 companies that started off by simply focusing on financial performance, but then it's been the criteria has been broadened, and last year particularly we have added in the last 2 years, in fact, weightages for CSR, weightages for sustainable development goals, weightages for diversity and governance. And these are now almost 20 to 25% of the weightage in terms of the criteria for the awards. What was really interesting last year, before we changed the criteria, so we looked at the 99 companies that could potentially qualify, for the award. 68% of them were reporting on at least one or more of the SDGs. And surprisingly, the greatest, if it's of interest, reporting was done by companies in the cement and engineering sector. But I think what this sort of indicates to me is that there is definitely an awareness amongst the listed companies for sure. And this was also demonstrated in COP26 that was held recently, where almost 30 companies from Pakistan signed up for the net zero coalition, and proportionately, I believe this was the highest number in Southeast Asia. Again, that indicates that there is a awareness and interest, and the top management is in fact committed to the ESG issues. I think to your question, how committed is the management, and are the tenures long enough to be able to do that? I would say to a large extent, and the IFC presentation touched upon that, that will flow from the shareholders. How the capital flows, and we are already seeing that the flow of capital is going towards companies, that are focused on ESG. So if that trend really becomes very, very clear, then, management will be under no doubt and will be completely incentivized to make sure that they focus and deliver on ESG targets. But the patience has to come from the shareholders ultimately as owners of the company, and the understanding has to be amongst the shareholders that and this is a controversial subject. The American Business Roundtable is still, even though they made the commitment, it's still up for debate that whether the business should just focus on delivering for shareholders, or there needs to be a much greater stakeholder management that needs to be taken into account. So I'll stop there in the interest of time, but there is a lot of nuance and depth to the question that you'd asked.
Great. So thank you very much. And I just want to, on that note, say that the State Bank of Pakistan and PBC are collaborating on identifying what might be possibly the way to attract ESG investment into Pakistan, starting with BlackRock, actually, which is, as you know, is the largest ESG-oriented asset manager in the world. So moving on to you, Lisa, I think you've given us a very broad canvas on how ESG is working and how sustainability is working. Do you have any insight on South Asian region? And is disclosure leading to greater competitiveness in the South Asian region?
Yes, we actually in December last year we hold DCFD workshops in Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, and we had over 200 companies joining and interested in the topics, starting to disclose that they're not just in the beginning, but they are really looking into how to disclose, but also integrate this information into their business strategies. And what I can tell you of my experience of my own country, I'm sitting in Bulgaria at the moment, and we are very much pressed by the European Union Green Deal to cut emissions, to accommodate targets to net zero. We are absolutely not prepared. We're trying to push and postpone things because we didn't do the work the 5 or 10 years before into the companies being adapted and prepared for this. For these changes, you have the opportunity to actually learn from our experience. So the prices of electricity don't go threefold as now are happening. And with the market size of 210 million people and growing economy, Pakistan offers multi-billion-dollar investment opportunities in sectors aligned with the SDG and IFC, and all the investors are actually looking for such opportunities. So thinking of it from the benefits of you, what this brings you is actually very positive, and all the markets around you are doing the same, although they're still not disclosing. Only India has a few companies that are disclosing on TCFD and under the GRI reporting database.
Thank you, Reza. And I think the audience will know that Pakistan's continued benefits of EU GSP Plus, which expires in 2023, is very much going to be contingent, among other things, on responsible practices towards the environment and so on. So moving on to you, Reyaz, they say in business that the businesses measure what they treasure and that they support what they report. And as one of the largest conglomerates in the country, and I would say one of the most successful ones too, do you, and I know that Engro publishes a sustainability report every year, but that's really accounting for what you've already done. Are you contemplating issuing any forward-looking ambition so that your employees and other stakeholders can also, along with yourself, measure progress going forward?
Ji, Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. To you, thank you, Ehsan and IFC team, and to all the my colleagues here on the panel and everyone who's watching this webinar. So Ehsan, I guess let's start with what do we fundamentally believe? We fundamentally believe that long-term shareholder value will only be maximized if Engro Corp invests in businesses which implement the best-in-class ESG standards. And why do I say that? And Ehsan, as you would know more than anyone, that the importance of Pakistan establishing globally competitive businesses, whether it is to increase our exports or whether it is to reduce our imports under that larger initiative that you're spearheading of Make in Pakistan. And what we have to fundamentally realize is that if we do not meet the ESG standards that the entire world is working towards, we cannot expect to run or create globally competitive businesses. So this is, and I can't agree more with Relitza, this is not a nice to do or a CSR activity. This is now becoming a fundamental part of strategy, of business strategy. So as you very rightly said, that we've got our existing businesses, which we are reporting on, and we have been reporting on for the last 10 odd years. But two things that I would like to say over here. Firstly, that we are looking at everything that we can do in terms of nature-based solutions, technology-based solutions, to make sure that we negate the impact of our existing businesses. But as far as our new investments are concerned, we're taking a very holistic approach where we're ensuring that from the get-go, these businesses are compliant with the globally accepted ESG standards and practices. And the investments there are virtually becoming a part of the investment case, as opposed to a product of your profitability when the projects actually come online. So in terms of our own measurement criteria, we're one of the, I believe we're the only Pakistani company which has actually signed a pledge at the World Economic Forum, which is to declare, to go to that higher standard of reporting. And in order to sort of achieve that goal, over the last 1 year, we've gone on a massive learning drive as far as our ESG aspirations are concerned. We've gone and met global leaders. This is a new subject. Everyone is in the learning phase to a large extent, and that's what we did. We've spoken to a lot of multinational companies, global giants, their chief sustainability officers in terms of how they're doing, how they're approaching the subject. The second set of stakeholders were our own employees. 74% of Engro is now millennials, and how are they thinking about it? Our directors, our shareholders. So and then of course doing an assessment of where we stand currently, and then building out, going about setting a target for ourselves. So have we reached a point, Hassan, where we're going to say that by such and such year we'll achieve net zero? No, we're probably going to get to that phase in another 6 months to a year. We're truly committed to the cause. We have already taken a number of initiatives. We're going to be planting trees in about 50,000 acres of land over the next few years. That's in partnership with WWF and the Ministry of Climate Change. There have been several other initiatives that we've taken. And I just want to touch upon one of the points that was made earlier about commitment of shareholders and commitment of management. I can tell you today that 20% of my objectives, right? And every CEO has a set of annual objectives. 20% of my objectives are based on ESG. It is also going to become a fundamental part of our long-term incentive scheme. So there are tools available which kind of align management action to making sure aligning managements to this longer term cause. But of course, it requires that alignment, as Farooq said, of shareholders, board members, and then subsequently senior management and down in the organization as well. So yeah, we're on that path and hoping for the best.
Thank you, Gayas. That's very encouraging. McKinsey actually just identified the top 4 or 5 key concerns of CEOs, and not surprisingly, the top 2 were purpose and strategy based on purpose and sustainability, and the other one was, of course, retention of quality talent. And the two go hand in hand. And as I said, I think you've also recognized that in order to retain the quality talent, you would actually really have to adopt a responsible practice, and seem to be doing that. And I know you are doing that. So over to you, Omar. You are engaged in a business that relies. You're engaged in a business that relies on multiple stakeholders, suppliers, customers, etc. And then just adopting responsible business practice within your own sort of confines or control is not adequate. How do you make sure that sense of responsibility extends through the entire supply chain or value chain?
Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Well, I agree with you. I think all stakeholders associated with us are now becoming increasingly aware of.
Omar, we can't hear you clearly. Why don't you switch your video off, please? I think there may be some internet issues.
Let me try to do that.
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, much better. Thank you.
What I was saying was that in particular, I think the Gen Z and the millennials, which are the future consumers for most organizations, is now increasingly holding companies and brands accountable for their ethical business conduct, their environmental impact, the commitment to diversity, and how consistently companies act out their values. And I think authenticity is now becoming absolutely critical, and words really must be translated into action to be truly effective. And I believe that for this to happen, companies now not only have to focus internally, but must see their vendors, their partners as an extension of their company and ensure that they are equally committed to responsible business conduct. And just don't know, Dolans in Pakistan is a fully owned subsidiary of a Turkish multinational Arçelik, which is a part of Koç Holding, a Fortune 500 company listed on the Istanbul Stock Exchange, and a customer GDP. And as a result, I think our ESG guidelines coming from our parent company are quite extensive. For Koç Group globally, and for Dolans here in Pakistan, honesty, integrity, superior business ethics are the foundations of our business and is a part of our DNA. We always conduct our business based on good intentions, mutual benefit and fair treatment in all our relationships. And it's this culture we use for all our external relationships as well. For the question that you asked, so for our suppliers, that they all act in accordance with the same that we follow internally. And for this, as a part of our governance structure, we have a very comprehensive, what we call the responsible purchasing policy, which has been communicated to all our vendors and partners locally and internationally. But the policy is all well and good, but to ensure that compliance is achieved to this policy, we have a framework which is essentially based on three operational pillars. The first pillar is prevention, where, like I said earlier, we ensure that all our suppliers have a clear understanding of it. But going ahead, we also actively work towards embedding a culture of integrity and following all these governance requirements at all levels in their organization. So we actively work. The second pillar is detection, which is actually ensured through regular reporting, regular operational audits by our compliance teams, and encouraging our supply employees to speak up against any non-compliance for which email address state quite clearly at vendor premises. And third pillar is the response. And here we show that we have the necessary infrastructure to duly investigate all violations. So all reported violations and audits are shared with the leadership team and for local vendors, and for leadership with the leadership team of Arçelik in Turkey for our global vendors. And these are reviewed and discussed quite regularly to ensure that all necessary steps have been taken to rectify or improve the process and see how we can support our vendors. So I think it's this framework which is working very effectively for us in ensuring that our partners and vendors follow the required code of code for conducting their businesses responsibly. And I think this is something which is very really helping us achieve our goals on this front.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Renita, I wanted to know what is, I mean, you know, are you promoting, or is IFC encouraging companies to become signatories to global frameworks? In your experience, does that improve the transparency? And what are you doing, or what are you hoping or encouraging non-listed companies to do in order to become more responsible, or at least disclose their sustainability practices?
Thank you. So just in the interest of time, three quick messages. Yes, we do encourage for companies to join such frameworks because this is aspirational. It shows them good practices from other regions that they can share ideas and network, and prepares them for the future. The second one is the one on changing the narrative, particularly management, focusing on what good disclosure and transparency brings to the company, not how much it costs, and how to encourage the non-listed companies to disclose. That is a lot of work, a lot of increasing their knowledge, understanding, but also giving them some incentives and as well support. Some of the master programs, for example, can also work with some of these companies to help them start on their disclosure journey.
Okay, thank you. Farooq, what are the plans for PSX to join the Sustainable Stock Exchanges movement?
Yeah, so Ehsan, we are actively looking at that, and hopefully we'll be able to join the SSE, the Sustainable Stock Exchange Coalition, in the near future. But the challenge is not just joining the coalition. The challenge is then, how do you move forward from that? But it's an important step to show intent, and obviously then you get access to a lot of support, intellectual capital and insights as to how to move forward. So we are definitely, going to be becoming part of that. In terms of our other efforts, we did as you may be aware, that the global reporting initiatives standards, the GRI standards, Pakistan Pakistani companies, we estimate, are about at 17% of them are reporting on GRI standards, compared to about 73%, in most other jurisdictions. So we are really lagging behind, but we are, as I mentioned earlier, I believe moving in the right direction. And to help push us further in that direction, particularly for listed companies, we formed recently jointly with PICG a task force on ESG, where we are really trying to bring together all the stakeholders, including SECP, ICAP, CFA Institute, and companies, obviously, to think through, how over the next few years, we can collectively become more ESG compliant in terms of reporting. Doesn't matter what the result is, whether a company is compliant or not, that's the second step. The first step is how do you get to everyone to report in a consistent manner, which would then mean that we can compare across companies, across sectors, create ESG indices as a stock exchange, which would then allow capital, the BlackRocks of the world that you were mentioning, and also domestic capital, can then come into confidence, come into those companies with confidence that they are truly ESG compliant or not. And the challenges, or the way forward is not just if a company is not ESG compliant that you don't invest in them. It is, as we were discussing earlier, how do you become shareholders with them to help them, down that route, as opposed to just shunning them and making them feel like pariahs, because it is a huge challenge. I was reading somewhere recently, which really I'd never thought of it like that, that it's really the first time in recorded human history that we are trying to replace a energy source as opposed to adding to it. When we moved or we added electricity and oil to coal, we didn't give up coal. But now with renewables, we're actually trying to replace the existing energy sources, which is a huge disruption, and it's a huge challenge that we all have to, figure out together for the sake of the world.
Yeah, no, I think absolutely correct. I think which naturally then brings me to you, Vyas. I know that there is a certain part of your business where certainly there are emissions and so on. And we also know that you're taking a lot of mitigating action. So obviously your first step is to get to net zero, but then is net positive also an objective that Engro would like to adopt?
So, Ahsan, as you very rightly said, that first up, we're emitting about 7.2 million tons of carbon dioxide every year, right? We're a very transparent company, and we firmly believe that we have, that we have to declare our numbers as they are. Here's the truth of the matter is that developing countries like ours, we have to balance the environmental considerations with some of the economic realities. The unfortunate part is that Pakistan has just delayed its use of local coal for power production by only 3 to 4 decades, and unfortunately we've lost billions of dollars in the process, because what you see now is that there is minuscule amount of power which is being produced from local coal as compared to our entire demand. And you see our dependence on imported energy, which is causing challenges to the entire economy and has been for the last many decades. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that we have to look at some of our economic realities. We also need to realize that the cleaner energy now, renewable energy now, is not just cleaner, it's also cheaper with all the subsidized, financing coming into play, and the mass production of all the equipment that is going on. And so the entire push is and the fact that solar energy, the fuel cost is zero. So you can't compete with something like that. And obviously we are playing our part in promoting renewable energy as well. So to your question, Ahsan, are we going to put up more power plants which are fueled by local or foreign coal? The answer is no. We're going to mitigate whatever impact that is being created. We also realize that we're saving about $150 million of valuable foreign exchange. We also realize that Pakistan's use of coal as a source of energy, local coal, is like considerably lesser compared to United States, China, Europe, India, Japan, all the developed countries as we speak. So, and yes, going forward, our commitment is very much towards investing in renewable energy while playing our part in mitigating and negating all the negative emissions that are coming from our current businesses. At the moment, Ehsan, we are really assessing our strategy in terms of how to deal with some of our current businesses and evaluating our future investments. So I'm not gonna comment on when we can possibly get to net positive. I think for us, the immediate goal is net zero first, and then we're going to take it from there, right?
Sure. No, I think that's a very sensible way to do it. Redsa, I think the last question to you. There's a scope for incentives and the scope for penalties, and obviously getting that into the right mix will go a long way to encouraging responsible business conduct. Do you have a view on carbon tax to penalize emissions, or what are your proposals on incentivizing the creation of offsets and promoting gender and diversity, inclusion, and so on? Because you haven't really touched upon those in your presentation.
Yes, I did mention briefly about the TCFD disclosure, and this is something that I will encourage the companies in Pakistan to start looking into, the disclosure of the climate financial information and integrating this into their financial filing. This is where the issues of internal carbon tax becomes important for the scenario analysis for the future performance and moving to net zero. On a general national level, 27 countries have carbon tax. You've heard IMF as well encouraging and pushing that agenda. So this will be coming, but first and most important is for companies to do an assessment of the climate disclosure, the importance of climate issues, and the gap analysis in their practices and information that they have internally in the companies. About the gender and diversity inclusion, fiscal policy is good, but what is also important is the gender bonds, also encouraging programs for support of women entrepreneurship as well. And there is a lot of examples both in the region and worldwide on that.
Okay, thank you. And I think for anybody who hasn't read the latest report, IMF report on Pakistan, there is a bit which says that the government should aspire to raise 1.2% of GDP through carbon taxes. But I mean, I don't want to alarm anybody at this stage. I think we're done with the question and answers, and I think the panel discussion has been very useful. So over to you, Nazish.
Okay, thank you, Ehsan Saab. I think since we're running over time, Ralitza has been kind enough to answer the Q&As online. So perhaps we could go towards the closing.
Okay, all right. So I want to actually thank, this has been really a very active, energized conversation. At least that's what I felt. I think the panel has really come very prepared, and of course, Ralitza has really encapsulated the canvas as well as can be done in the 20 odd minutes that she had. I'm not going to belabor the point because I think all of us understand the need to have a purpose-led strategy and then to have meaningful action which delivers on sustainable goals and diversity and inclusion. So repeating that would really not serve any purpose. I want to close again, given the time commitment that we have, with one very interesting saying that I came across. It goes as follows. So yesterday, I wanted to change the world. Today, I'm wiser. I want to change myself. So I think the change has to start with all of us individually, and then within our businesses, and then within the communities, and then hopefully in the country and the world. So on that note, thank you very much, everybody, for participating. And it's really been very rewarding from my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So I think it was a good session. Thank you,
It was
Relitza.
really good session.
Yeah.
She dropped.
Yeah, she just dropped off, but no, she did a great job. That was excellent.
Yeah.
And good job on answering the questions in the chat room.
Yeah.
It was really smooth and
Q&A.
very nice, very well done.
Yeah. So but
Really good participation, by the way.
We were up to
Until
95 at the highest, huh? So 95.
Yeah, and until now we had about 66, which is not bad, right?
All right. So what I'm going to do is end the webinar because there are some people on this. And then we'll speak on offline, I guess.
Okay, we can connect later. Yes, thank you.
All right.